Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show, and this is the Tesla Roadster weekly podcast. I'm Pete Gruber,
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
and we have another AI-generated image behind us here, and what I asked for was a Tesla Roadster. I didn't specify color this time, and the reason I like this picture so much, even though it has some inaccuracies, if you look at the hood vanes, for example, there are a few more than there should be, is the color is just spectacular compared to everything we've seen in Tesla Roadster. It's the closest thing to the Lotus copper color that they had. There was only one car that was a U.S. issue, VIN 501, I believe, that had that color. And but in Europe there were a few, and but this definitely would be, in my mind, an inspiring color if anybody wanted to change the color of their Roadster or put a wrap. It just looks like a really cool, compelling color going down the road.
And as this Chat GPT I'm sorry, not Chat GPT, this is
Mid-Journey.
Mid-Journey that's
Okay.
doing this. It's getting smarter because this is a better Roadster than I've seen almost any of its other renderings.
Yeah. You know what? The charge port door, I think, is in the correct spot.
I think it is. The mirrors look pretty good, and
Yeah.
the wheels look better than they normally do. It's other than the potential hood vane issue, that looks really, really accurate this time.
So I guess we can train AI and teach it some things. So one of the first things I wanted to pop up, we've got an image, Jesse. It's the eBay electric blue Roadster that is listed right now. It's a 2008 Roadster, and it's in California. There we go. The buy it now price is $84,500. And for a functioning Roadster, of course, that would be a smoking deal, but it's not. It is a brick car. It needs a battery, and so typically what people do when they're selling brick Roadsters, they will deduct $30,000 from the current market price, which puts a brick Roadster into the $60,000, maybe $70,000 range. So this one at 84.5 on the surface seems high, but you know what? If you look at the mileage on this thing, and I just talked to the owner about 20 minutes ago or so, he confirms that it's got 1,488 miles on the odometer, original.
Wow.
And it's been confirmed by a technician in California recently when they fired it up, and confirmed that it's 1,488 miles. The other thing that makes this car unique is it's like a time capsule, according to the seller. It's incredibly clean, very low wear, of course, based on that mileage.
Mhm.
And our take on it is at 84.5, it's a heck of a bargain, because if you put a $30,000 battery pack in this thing, now you've got a $200,000 car again. And the reason we say that is one of ours on the Roadster matchmaking site just sold, and it was the 347-mile car in California also, Gaviota. A radiant red, very low mileage, and the final sell price on that car was $225,000. Now, of course, this is a functioning car. It's got the legacy battery pack. So this eBay car is definitely, in our opinion, undervalued. And
Oh, definitely. At 225,000 for the 347-mile car, that was VIN 1417 that just recently sold. That seems to be kind of in the range of the marketplace
mhm.
that we've seen for a few months now. While Roadster prices are not at the stratospheric levels they got to at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022, they're definitely coming back.
Mhm.
And the right person is going to see this listing on eBay, is going to realize the really extreme bargain that they're getting. They'll probably pick that up.
Right. You know, the bid history on the 347-mile car runs something like this. It started at 50,000, and of course that was the first bid. Then it went to 105,000. Then it went to 140,000, and it sat there for a while. And finally, a collector came along and decided, you know what, this is a car worth putting in my collection, even at $225,000.
Yes.
Um, in fact, what we did was we posted the final message from the seller and the buyer on Facebook, but let me read it to you because normally when the cars sell on our matchmaking site, we don't always post what they sold for. Oftentimes, the buyers want that to remain confidential.
Hmm.
And what you'll see on the matchmaking site when it goes into the sold column, which is down below, is the asking price. And that often is somewhat negotiated. So you can take 5% off of that, maybe even sometimes 10%.
Sure.
But in this case, both the seller and buyer wanted us to publicize this. And what they said was they have accepted 225. Okay, it's going in someone's collection. Um, they say that sometimes, okay, the final sales price remains confidential, buyer preferences. With the seller's permission, however, they said, or the buyer said, I think you can move the ad from the sold column and change the price from email a bid to $225,000. That's $75,000 higher than the next highest price shown of 150. And his reason was, he says, I think it's good to show the prices rising again in Roadsters.
I think that's good too. You know, it's more information is better for the community, especially when this information is good news for those people who own Roadsters today.
Mm-hmm. Which probably leads us into the update on the 3 Chinese Roadsters. And I think I have that here as well. Here we go. All right, so the latest update on the 3 in China is July 5th is when the next ship is leaving for the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And all 3 of them are scheduled to be on that ship at this point. A little bit more paperwork to do, but nothing major. It also turned out that it was more expedient for the sellers to purchase the sea containers that they had been leasing for the last, 11 years or so. And so now the sea containers and the cars are owned by the sellers, and it makes it easier to move them around at this point.
Now, are they leasing those older sea containers that they originally said they thought were unseaworthy, or did they go ahead and buy new ones and move the cars to the new ones?
Apparently, these sea containers are the same ones that the cars have been sitting in, and they were deemed worthy for the transport.
Oh, that's good to know. And actually, I think that's good news for the cars as opposed to bad news, because you have cars with locked wheels and only 2 or 3 inches of clearance on either side. And are we going to damage the cars trying to get them out? Or, you know, is the steering just off center just enough that you won't know until it's too late?
Yeah.
So seeing them stay in those original sea containers and have those containers be deemed seaworthy, I think is great news for the chances of those cars to get back in pristine condition.
It reduces the risk tremendously because now the sea containers get put on the ship and eventually onto a flatbed and or a semi,
Yeah.
and then transported to Phoenix. Now, once they get to Phoenix, we're going to, of course, take the cars out, and we then are going to park the sea containers in our commercial compound, and eventually those will be sold here locally.
Mm-hmm.
The cars will be brought over to the Gruber Motor Company service center, and we will initially do a careful analysis of everything, clean them up a bit, of course, after sitting for 11 years, and then begin a deep dive into the electronics. We will wake up the VMS. We will verify the odometer readings, and at this point, no one knows precisely what that is. Even Tesla is unsure how many miles a brand new car would have had from moving it, out of the service or out of the production facility to wherever it is that it got sold from. So look for these cars. They'll be on the water for a good 3 weeks, and then probably some processing time in California, Long Beach, and then some transport time. But by August, these cars should be here, and then we can, begin to start a whole new adventure with these cars.
Oh, I can't wait to see those, to be able to look through the log files and find out the incredible story that these cars are going to have to tell. I think it's going to be fascinating. Have you heard anything more about the keys? Are they still looking for the keys in China, or are they still just trying to work with Tesla to get new keys made?
I forgot to ask that in the conversation yesterday. And in fact, that thought occurred to me as we were talking about this, because like you mentioned, without keys, the front wheels, if there's a slight, deviation, it's going to be difficult to get the cars out unless they put 4 dollies, one underneath each wheel.
Yes.
And again, like you pointed out, there's risk if you're moving anything like this in a very tight space. So getting them here and then having us, do the removal of the cars is definitely a lower risk activity than it would have been there with the staff at the dock.
Exactly. We have the tools and the dollies to be able to do these, whether the cars have keys or not. So I'm pretty comfortable with the skills that our staff has.
And Lord knows we have plenty of dollies. All the cars that come here that are bricked, eventually those dollies remain here. So, yeah, we'll be able to handle them. Looks like there's a question for you.
Yes. Good morning, George. George from the Watch Rich Rebuilds channel is said, good morning, guys. Is Mark really here today in person, or is it an AI hologram of Mark? Well, George, you got to remember, this might be AI holograms of both Pete and myself. But no, I'm glad to be back. I was gone on business for the company for one of the other divisions this last week.
He is back, yes. So getting back for a moment to this eBay Roadster that we had popped up here, there's some conflicting information on one of the Facebook sites about how long this has been bricked. One comment was it's been bricked since 2012. Another one is 1.5 to 2 years. The owner confirms it's been 1.5 to 2 years. In fact, prior to that, it was at the San Rafael Service Center for a half a year or more.
Okay.
And so at this point, his belief was that it takes 8 months or more to get a battery. That has not been our experience from Tesla. And for those of you that want some assistance with order processing, as we have said for a couple of years now, we help feed the order processing for Tesla Roadster battery packs by sharing our list with Tesla. And if you email us, ev@gruber.com, we'll send you instructions how you can get yourself front and center for that Tesla Roadster battery pack. So the car may or may not sell on eBay, and if it doesn't, our recommendation was get it to our service center. We will put it into the queue, of course, and we work very closely with the Tempe, Arizona Service Center. They have done over a half a dozen battery swaps for us within the last 6 months, actually last year.
Yeah.
And it's not that large a problem to get the batteries for the Tesla Roadsters. So mileage listed is 1488 precisely, and we'll see if this thing moves on eBay.
I would love to see that come into our shop. That blue is probably my favorite color of Roadster.
That's a twilight blue. That's right. I said electric blue earlier.
Yes.
That would be the that's the darker
This
blue
is the
metallic.
darker blue.
Very nice. Okay. News on the World Traveling Roadster, Roadster number 507, which came to us about 6 months ago or so with a brick battery pack. It's a long story, but I'll try to make it short. This is a car that went around the world in 2012. It was supposed to achieve a round the world in 80 days to match the movie that came out in the last century, but because of a number of logistics issues and political instabilities in countries that it was driving through, and of course delays and charge time, it took 127 days to get around the world, but it actually did so, and it set a number of world records. Rafael de Maistre is the owner and driver, and some of the world records that it set was winning the first EV race around the world in a standard all-electric vehicle. The second being the first man to drive alone around the world in an electric car. Now notice it said, man, we need a woman out there now to drive one of these around the world so we can get another world record.
Yes.
Making the fastest electric vehicle circumnavigation around the globe ever in 127 days. And the fourth one is making the longest drive in a standard electric car, continuous is what I'm assuming here, 28,282 kilometers. So this Tesla Roadster became pretty famous, and a museum in Munich asked if they could put this in their exhibit, just like Petersen does. Most of the things at Petersen are on loan; they're not there permanently unless they've purchased it. So the owner of VIN 507 agreed. Yeah, let's put it there for a year. I'll give it to you. And it turns out that unexpectedly, hundreds of thousands of visitors came to see this car. It was very popular. And remember, this was 2012, 2013 or so when electric vehicles were in the early stages of adoption.
Sure, that means the Model S had just come out and there were no other electric vehicles at all at that
Right.
point.
And Europe was probably deficient in, EVs because it took a while for them to warm up to the EV craze.
Mm-hmm.
So the museum said, this has been so popular. Could we have it a little while longer? So they agreed for another 6-month extension. Well, it turns out during that 6-month extension, the charging discipline or protocols were not followed properly, and the car got bricked. Now, in the Roadster world, of course, that means it went dead and it needed to be recovered. And the car did not get to a shop like ours that is able to do recovery, so it eventually got hard bricked. So then it sat. And last year, the owner contacted us and said, I'd like to send it to Gruber Motor Company for a full rebuild and for a battery replacement. So it got here at the end of last year, and we ended up coordinating with Tesla. And by the way, shout out to Tesla. They fast-tracked this battery pack through their system. And within a couple of months, we had a battery pack waiting for this car at the Tempe, Arizona Service Center.
That's pretty incredible, considering even though they've got better turnarounds on their battery packs now than they used to have, it's still typically a pretty good wait to get one.
And they fully realized that this was a historic car, that it was definitely furthering the cause of EV adoption and the transition to sustainable, transportation. So anyway, the car now has a new 3.0 battery pack. We went through the car, we rebuilt the electronics. We did what we do best, which is take care of all the deferred maintenance in the power electronics module. And furthermore, recognizing that this Roadster was not going to be parked every night in a garage somewhere out of the elements, the Tesla Roadsters are not quite weatherproof, waterproof especially. So we rebuilt some of the electronics and also waterproofed them so that this car could continue its journey. The other thing that we found, oddly enough, was it must have gone through some Four Seasons areas where there was a lot of salt. There was rust on the tie rods, some of the connecting rods underneath the car. So we resolved all of that as well. And
Okay.
actually, I've been test driving it most of the week, and it's rock solid now. So the owner of the car is flying in Saturday night this week. He's going to take the car Monday and continue on his journey. We've done some press releases. We don't know how much media is going to show up for this event, but we'll see how much interest there is in the social media level for this car now going on its second journey.
I certainly hope there's a lot of interest on this. Raphael is hoping to use this car for his 2024 journey around the world. You can see more information about that journey on 80edays.com, so 80edays.com. And he's going to be part of a group of several teams of people that are either going to be driving all segments or even just some of the segments. They may even made recent map changes, route changes. They have the entire route mapped out that they want to use on Google Maps. They need, of course, to avoid some of the conflicts that are going on. They don't want to be trying to drive through a war zone.
The first time around, it went through Ukraine.
Yeah.
Can't do that anymore.
No, they can't do that. They actually had to make a more southerly route to, they're going around the south end of the Black Sea now instead of up through the north end and through that southern edge of Russia and Ukraine.
Yeah. The route that we were given, by the way, the most recent one is that from now through November, the car will cross the United States and then eventually go across the ocean to Asia, to China, Kazakhstan, and to Romania, and retrace basically the route that it took in 2012, other than through the war zones at this point.
Yes, and And I was fascinated. I love looking at maps. So I was looking at the map. They'll go in through Romania, then they'll drop down into Africa and Morocco, and eventually end back in Miami, where I think that's where they're starting the 2024 rally this time.
Hmm. And for those of you interested in more information, Raphael is actually going to be a podcast guest here tomorrow. And at 10 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, he'll be on a Zoom call.
Mhm.
And he'll be able to tell us about all of his adventures, his motivations behind all of this, what the source of his passion for this is. And it should be an interesting podcast.
I think Raphael is going to be a great ambassador for electric cars overall, and I really encourage you to be here to ask your questions.
Yep. It looks like George with, we got to plug Rich's channel here.
Yes.
Watch Rich Rebuild's channel. By the way, he's going to be on our podcast. George talked to him recently, and
Yes.
he's trying to get the Robert Downey Jr. episode sewed up, and then he plans to be on our podcast. So
Yeah, so we've got a couple weeks before we'll be able to get it on the schedule, but it's looking promising.
yeah, it is.
I'm looking forward to
It'll be fun having Rich. I'll try to do my Joe Rogan thing with him, you know.
it.
So he asks, he says, can't you pull the wheel off a Roadster and mechanically release the parking brake like you can on Model S or X just to get it to roll? Actually, in a Tesla Roadster, there are a couple of ways. Well, let me back up. When the car bricks, goes dead,
Hmm.
it's stuck in park. And park means that there's a parking pawl that has a lock on the transaxle. So the rear wheels are locked. And that makes it difficult if you're trying to get a Roadster into a shop like ours because it has to be transported.
Right.
Now they have to forklift it onto a transporter or winch it on a transporter. And transporters don't just haul one car. They have multiple cars that they have to juggle, take on and off. So it makes it difficult with a locked Roadster. And of course, the price for transport goes way up when you have a locked wheel car.
Hmm.
There are a couple of ways that you can unlock a Tesla Roadster. One of them is by waking up to 12 volts, and we have a CAN signal that we can send into the VMS that will unlock the parking pawl. Now, that's not something that the owner can do out at location,
Right.
so that makes it difficult. If the car is still alive or has any life in it, then you can go into tow mode by going into the VDS screen, even though it may not charge. For the last few days or week or so before it goes terminally dead, you can get into the VDS vehicle display screen,
Right.
and then initiate tow mode. And then the final way, which we've also done at times, if you pull one of the half shafts in the back of the car, that releases or frees up the rear wheels. So those are the three ways that you can free up a Tesla Roadster. And having said that, some of them come in locked. And we have extensions on the forklifts. We're able to extract them off of the transporter with a forklift. And what we try to avoid is any winching, because now you create flat spots in your tires. Although one of the guys with a flatbed just last week was telling us, this was the customer telling us how the flatbed driver got the Roadster on the flatbed with the wheels locked, and he was winching it, pulling it up there.
Okay. Okay.
He said he went through 2 cans of WD-40, and it was so slippery that it just went up on that vehicle.
Oh, that's hilarious. You know, the ones that I think we have the biggest challenges with are like the lady from Florida who had her rapidly declining Roadster.
Yeah.
We were fortunate that the transport put it on the very back.
Yeah.
Because she drove it onto the transport. By the time it got here, the wheels were locked, and so we had to forklift it off.
And this is one of those rare cases when you have a resistive cell that is so bad that you're losing 12 to 13 miles a day. And we might have made it, but the transporter got sick during that scheduled pickup, and we lost 1 day.
Oh,
And it was enough to brick the car by the time it got here. So yeah, they were able to drive it on a transporter. We knew when it got to us it was going to be locked, and we were able to extract it.
Yeah. George again, another comment. Hello from my couch on my Commodore 64 dial-up connection. George, I figured you'd probably be on a Trash 80, the Radio Shack TRS 80 with its cassette player and its 300 baud modem. So good to have you here. And then Lightning Rod is joining us from YouTube. He says, hello from Thunder Bay, Canada. And Lightning Rod, I'm hoping that you don't have all the smoke in the sky now. I hope things are going well for you up there.
Yeah. He says, LOL, rust is my primary revenue stream. Yeah. I used to live back east too. And, you literally would see cars driving down the road that were missing portions of their lower door panels because they had rusted away.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, rust is just an insidious cancer on cars.
mhm. And then George, yeah, I remember an acoustic coupler in 1976 in my house with a dumb terminal that I built. It was a Digital Equipment VT52. And I worked there, so we were able to buy scrap parts. And I remember I bought enough parts to put together a video terminal, a dumb terminal.
Yeah, okay.
But in order to communicate with anything, you had to have a modem. And back then, it was dial-up voice type modems.
Oh, yes.
So you took your handset off the phone after you called the number, put it into a couple of cups, and now you were styling. You had 300 baud of data transfer.
Right. That's right. We got at my first job, we had a DEC Vax Mini, and it would connect up to the home office in Illinois. And we had a modem. It was about so tall and so deep and so wide. It was also a 300 baud, but with it, we could hook in to the accounting system up in Illinois, and I could assist the people in the accounting department. At that time, I was more IT and programming, but I assisted them with all their accounts receivable as well.
1,200 baud modems came out at one point in time.
Yes.
And they were no longer acoustic coupler types. They connected directly to the phone lines. Now, 1,200 baud, of course, is insanely slow. But
of course.
There were actually customers that we had back then that would buy a small home in a depressed area in Phoenix, not to rent it, but what they would do is outfit that into a timeshare location, not for vacation visitors.
Yeah.
But back then, people couldn't afford computers. So what you could do is rent time on someone else's computer, and you would access it through a 1,200 baud modem through your phone lines and have dumb terminals back at your office, basically, that would then communicate with this computer. And these guys actually had businesses. I remember stacks of 1,200 baud modems on shelves with the equivalent of a 16-bit computer, like a PDP-11.
Yeah.
Sometimes they had 1170s, which was a 32-bit machine. And it's just amazing how far we've come.
It sure is, man. It sure is.
All right, let's see what other news items we have here. I found something on a Facebook site from someone in Norway, Lasse Edvardsen. He was doing some research, and apparently he tracks the number of Tesla Roadsters that were registered in Norway. And this is always of interest to people because so few were built, 2,412 or something like that. And, where did they go? What parts of the world? That type of thing. He said that Norway received apparently 113 Tesla Roadsters. But oddly enough, still registered today are only 51. And someone speculated it's not that half of these cars were total crashed or, are out of commission at this point. Apparently, to avoid registration fees, which are pretty steep in that country, apparently, some people just don't register that Tesla Roadster. And it probably, since they're going collectible, if you don't have to register, it's going to increase in value.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, without that additional cost. So that's one of the explanations, at least someone offered on the site, that 51 of them are still registered today. Deregistered, of course, 45, wrecked 4 of them. And then he talks about how they were exported and imported. He says export to another country after registration in Norway was 13. The first car ever registered was April 29th of 2009, and the last one registered was May 28th of 2014. Now, that's interesting because in the U.S., Tesla stopped selling Roadsters by 2011, and I think there was some sort of a federal mandate that did not allow them to continue. Probably some sort of something ran out, some sort of a registration or
some sort of red tape ran out.
Yeah.
I took some time. I love these kind of statistic sites, and so I actually took and looked up this teslastats.no Norwegian site, and he's actually running stats for all the Tesla models, the Model S, Model X, Model 3, Model Y, has a little bit of information on Roadsters. While I So I took some time to navigate it, kind of looking at the numbers. Had some trouble finding all the information on the Roadsters, but I was able to confirm the 113. The most interesting stat that he had that I thought was fascinating was 2022 registrations of Model Ys.
Mm-hmm.
This nugget was so interesting because in 2022, Norway registered more Model Y Teslas than they had registered of any car at any time ever. It broke a 53-year-old record.
Mm-hmm.
Back in 1969, Norwegians registered somewhere around 15,000 VW Beetles.
No kidding.
And it was about just under 16,000, roughly 890 more Model Ys registered in 2022 than there were VW Beetles in 69.
So the Y is actually more popular than the VW, at least in Norway.
Yeah, it's not only the most popular car in Norway, it's the most popular car that Norway has ever had registered over their history of having vehicles.
Amazing, amazing. So someone else piped up regarding this, how many Roadsters were registered in the country. Jonas Markman piped up and said, well, Sweden has 15 registered Roadsters. And some of the details were 9 were sold new in Sweden, 9 were imported, 5 from Germany, 1 from the U.S. and 1 from Norway, 1 from Switzerland, and 1 unknown. 2 were exported, 1 to Denmark and 1 to Netherlands, and 1 was wrecked. So there you have it. Then there's another statistic that popped up that Denmark has 62 Tesla Roadsters, and they didn't break this one down, where they came from, how many are still left, or that type of thing. So it looks like Europe does have a fair share of Roadsters then.
It certainly does. Back to the modem thing, George responded to us from YouTube, and he said, Mom would pick up the other phone line in the house and knock you off the line.
Totally, yes.
I totally remember that. For me, it was actually my wife more than my mom, though. It was young but married. And then Lightning Rod says, what? A shortage of red tape?
Highly doubtful.
Highly
yes.
doubtful. Well, yeah, all that regulatory red tape. It's always there.
So a question from George. He says, if Roadsters in Norway were never registered, I didn't get from that comment, by the way, George, that these were cars that were never registered. They were deregistered to avoid additional charges. But anyway, let's go with the question. If the Roadsters in Norway were never registered there, does that make you the original owner if you buy one and register it for the first time?
The short answer to that, surprisingly, from the government's view, is yes.
Yeah.
We've actually done an escrow service on a Roadster that had never been registered and has just a certificate of origin with it. And the question at hand in this case was that came to me was, what kind of sales tax are we going to have to pay on this? Because we paid, I think it was $130,000 or $140,000 for this Roadster. I said, well, since all it has is a certificate of origin, you don't have title paperwork to sign over, and the certificate of origin says the car sold for $60,000.
Mm-hmm.
So when you take it in to register it, you're going to become the original owner, and you're going to pay sales tax on a $60,000 transaction, regardless of what you actually paid for it.
Interesting. Okay. All right. These Chinese Roadsters are going to fit in that same category.
Yes.
They never went into ownership.
Yes. So if they ever get registered and put on the road, here's hoping that they don't.
Mm-hmm.
It will be the same type of thing. Whatever that original purchase price was will be listed on the manufacturing certificate of origin, and that will be the whatever. If there are any kind of sales taxes associated with the car registration, those are the taxes that will be paid.
Yeah, that should be a heck of a bargain then, considering what they may sell for.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So we've got a Roadster public service announcement here from Marius Rodenberg. He is from the Netherlands. And this Sunday, June 25th, they are having a Tesla Roadster meeting in the Netherlands. They're going to meet in Demeern, Demeern, at 9:30 a.m. And then the end point is going to be Bodegraven. They also hope to see some roadsters from Germany there. You know, Germany and the Netherlands share a border. They're very close. My wife's aunt, when we were in France, same thing. They're right on the Belgian border. They would drive into Belgium to buy their gasoline because it's substantially less taxes on the gasoline there. Very close, everything in Europe. But anyway, the gathering is at 9:30 in the morning. They're going to leave at 10 o'clock for a 125-kilometer tour around, and they will end up in Bodegraven. And both of these are just south of Amsterdam. I looked at the map. So if any of you are in that region and you want to see some Tesla Roadsters, for those of you that don't have a Roadster, they want to take pictures, this would be a great event. Again, they're going to meet at a restaurant in Demeern at 9:30 a.m. and then drive their cars to Bodegraven. All right.
Do we know, is this street restaurant itself called Demeern?
Don't know that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because that would be fun. That just.
Do you know, one of the things I'm going to suggest to the audience, if you have an event like this, and we have another one here at the Petersen Auto Museum, by the way, send that to us. We'll plug it for you. We'll announce it for you. We'll give you some advertising, free advertising and free visibility.
Oh, absolutely. And and if it's not a Roadster event, if it's a general EV event, we'll talk about it on Tuesday or Thursday. We'll still do that announcement. Absolutely.
Instagram, Fabio Tesla says hello. Well, welcome. Appreciate you joining us.
Welcome. Glad to have you.
We have some feedback from the last Tesla Roadster podcast we did, and it's on the YouTube video as a comment, but I like this one. He says, this channel is the encyclopedia of the Roadster. He says, I am from Spain, and I don't intend to buy a Roadster, but it's awesome to listen to you guys.
Yeah, that's such a high compliment, and it's really a privilege for us to be able to be here in this forum, talk about the things that we know, be able to share some of the knowledge that we have. We're by no means the end all and be all of knowledge, but just like we do with the census, by collaborating with the community, we're able to gain knowledge. It helps the community. It helps us to be able to do what we need to do to serve the community as well.
And it allows us to pass on helpful tips, which leads me actually into the next item on that same video.
Yes.
We got someone from, it doesn't say where they're from, but we were talking about rodent damage in EVs or anything electronics for that matter, because certain types of wire insulation may be made with partially organic materials like soybean oil. So the rodents pick up on that, and they think it's a meal, and they will destroy the wiring harnesses in cars. It's not uncommon in Tesla Roadsters, if they're left outside, that eventually they end up with rodent damage or even nests being built inside the Roadster because it has so many nooks and crannies. It was a prototype vehicle.
And if I remember right, we've removed a few nests in our time.
We have. The running boards are a prime housing project for rodents, even as large as rats. But anyway, he says that fabric softener dryer sheets laid inside the car will prevent the rodents or keep them away. There must be something about that they don't like.
Oh, I think that's a great tip. I could totally see that because those sheets are so strongly scented, and it's a for the sheet itself, it's a very artificial scent. It's very, but when that comes out in the clothes, it smells better because it's not nearly as intense.
So another event, actually at the Petersen Auto Museum, and that is also this Sunday, June 25th. It's in Los Angeles, the Petersen Auto Museum. We've had pictures of it up before. It's a spectacular architecture building. I think Jesse's going to look for it. Okay, there we've got the announcement. This is your chance to meet Franz von Holzhausen. And if you don't know Franz, he is the chief designer, his team at Tesla, responsible for the Tesla Model S design, the new Tesla Roadster design, the Cybertruck, did I leave one out? The semi-truck, Model X, Y, He's involved in all of them, or his
So
team.
he and his team have designed virtually every one of them: the S, the Y, the 3.
Except for the first generation Roadster, which was a Lotus Elise designed by Lotus.
Right. Okay.
But he will be there, special guest. They will have free food and drinks. And the Tesla San Diego Club is going to meet at the Carlsbad Supercharger outlet at 6 a.m. in the morning. Those of you that don't want to get up that early, if you can make it to Petersen by 8 a.m., that's when the event there starts. But if you want to go up with a bunch of passionate Tesla people, the San Diego Tesla Club is going to be featuring this, and you'll be able to drive up with them to the Petersen Museum. How long is the drive from San Diego up to LA? Probably a couple hours or so, I would say.
Yeah, it's a couple hours. It's usually about 120 to 140 miles, depending on where in Los Angeles and where in San Diego you take off.
Right.
But taking off up at Carlsbad, that's a little bit north of San Diego because there's the cliffs
true.
nearby. So,
And Sunday morning traffic shouldn't be too bad.
I don't think it'd be too bad.
Yeah.
It would be a little bit more reachable for you or I than meeting over in Amsterdam on the 25th.
So YouTube, Mark Hendricks asks, he says, when are you guys going to have a Model S live chat? You know, we do these chats based on interest level, and if we hear more of that, I think the last thing Jesse and the team want to do is yet another podcast. What do you have, 5 per week now? But that would be an interesting podcast. I agree, and I think the audience is going to be much larger for a Model S podcast, since there are literally hundreds of thousands of those vehicles.
I think for that one, we can just tell them to come tomorrow. Our regular show, we talk about Model S a lot. We talk about everything. This one is just more limited to Roadster, but we do cover a lot of Model S stuff already.
That's true. We weave in broader topics, but so join us Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. He says he has water coming out of his right side vent when he makes a hard left turn. Wow. Okay. It sounds like a condensate line may need to be rerouted. It's the only way that a Model S can generate water. It's not a hydrogen vehicle.
Right, and that's one of the things I'm thinking too. And out of that right vent, that right vent is, well, you've got the upper one, obviously, on the dash, and then there's something lower down by the feet. So it depends on which one it is. If it's that lower one, that would sound an awful lot like a condensate line issue.
Yeah, a plug condensate line perhaps, or a one that's not routed properly.
Yes, and we've seen condensate lines that we consider them not routed properly, although that from the factory they routed such that they would drain onto the battery itself.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do our battery pulls on the Model S, we'll tend to reroute those condensate lines so that they actually drop condensate out of the car without threatening the battery.
Yeah.
Another thing we might ask there, Mark, Mr. Mark Hendricks, how hard of a left turn are we talking about?
Is the saliva coming out the side of your yeah.
Yes.
Interesting. So George is asking, there is a product out there, and we're talking again about the rodent damage. Apparently, there's a product out there called Mouse Out. Great name for that type of product. It's an oily undercoating that also prevents rust. Mice don't like the way it smells or tastes. Okay.
Thank you for the tip, George. It's those kinds of tips that I really enjoy as we go through these podcasts, both the Roadster one here on Wednesday and the more general ones on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
We had a Roadster customer that popped up last week and needed a windshield. And, these windshield brakes typically start with a star brake.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing we want to point out is if you immediately remedy the star brake, it won't grow and turn into a long crack, which now requires a windshield replacement. We have a windshield expert that comes out to do our windshields at the service center. And he carries one of these windshield remediation kits in his car, not just for his customers, but for him. He says the instant he gets a rock chip on the road, he immediately pulls over to the side and uses that windshield repair kit to stop the spread of that crack. And he claims he's never replaced his own windshield as a result.
Now, that's an interesting concept. It seems like it takes a few minutes to do, but
Mhm.
they're pretty simple. And
Yeah, there are two versions of it, by the way. There's the Amazon $80 to $150 version, which
Right.
is what we use, the Pro version. But then there's a kit that you can buy at the AutoZones, O'Reilly's, Checker Autos.
yeah, $10 kits, $15 kits.
Yeah, and those work just as well. They're one-time use, but when's your next star break going to occur? So you just buy another one when that happens. So that's our first advice: is if you have a star break, don't let any time go by. Get it resolved quickly, and it's probably cheaper for you to even go to or call a windshield repair company to have it repaired than to change one of those $1,200 Tesla Model S windshields.
Well, and here in the Phoenix area, at least, and I think this is true in many areas throughout the country, if you get a star on your windshield, go to your nearest car wash. A lot of times, those car washes have windshield chip repair specialists there on site, standing by, and they're trying to sell you the windshield replacements and stuff. They know that that's good business, but a lot of times they can do those repairs right then and there as well.
Interesting. You must go to the more expensive car washes. The ones I go, the 99-cent ones, don't have quite that much following that.
Yeah, most of the time I anymore, what I found anymore is I go ahead and I get the subscription, and as much as I hate to pay for subscriptions, they're the death of me, I feel like. But I go ahead and pay for the subscription, and that way, for a very small amount, I can go as many times as I want, as frequently as I want, and that way we can keep our cars clean. Amazing the amount of dust we have here in Phoenix.
There's probably another benefit to getting those subscriptions is they eventually stop asking you if you want a subscription. It happens every time I go through the car wash.
Oh yes. But I hear you there. For the longest time, go through the $3 car wash and just dry it yourself. It's so easy to do.
By the way, I said 99-cent. I'm dating myself. I don't
I was
think
about
there's
to say.
anyone like that anymore.
But the other thing too about those subscriptions is they'll still ask you unless you get the highest tier.
Really?
So if you get the middle one, every time you go, they're like, "Hey, do you want to upgrade this to the next one?"
They
so
need
you
to upsell. Yeah.
So you got to
Of
get the
course.
highest, most expensive one.
No, you can just say no.
Yeah. So anyway, the windshield. So customer contacts us. It was a long, the star break had grown, and do we have a windshield was basically the question. Try as we may, and we've tried this before, apparently Tesla Roadster windshields were unique to the car.
Okay.
And there were a number of them built, and Tesla used to have them, but we couldn't find one. So the good news, though, is that the Lotus Elise windshield will work. The problem is you have that dark band at the bottom of the windshield, and then you have your sun guard on the top.
Right.
That bottom dark band is a little bit too tall for where the VIN plate is on the Tesla Roadster, so it covers up part of it. And that's the only downside. Other than that, a Lotus Elise windshield will work. If you have a local Lotus shop, that's probably your best bet. The one that we referred this customer to was one that was going to ship it. And he was very clear about the fact that windshields do not ship well. They have a very high incidence of damaged windshields by the time they get to the destination, no matter how well they pack them. It reminds me of Ace Ventura when he's walking down the hall throwing the box and shaking it and everything inside is broken. That's what I envision that some of these delivery services do to the stuff. But anyway, that's one risk that you'll find if you're trying to ship the windshield is they don't travel well, they don't ship well. But that's one way that you can get a windshield. See if there's anything else about that. Yeah, so that's basically it with the windshield story.
That's I know that there are not going to be a lot of Lotus dealerships sitting around the corner, but just the fact that you have any kind of solution in this case for a Roadster is actually kind of remarkable because we've talked about this before. The Roadster does not meet the minimum federal requirements here in the United States for the requirement for Tesla to provide parts. And there have been all kinds of ramifications as a result of that, and the windshields are yet another one.
And with only 2,400 cars built, it's not like vendors, aftermarket vendors, are knocking themselves out to make replacement parts for the Roadster.
Exactly. There's just no ROI for them.
Too small a market, yeah. So there's a Tesla Roadster currently up in Toronto, and it is bricked. And again, the good news is that Tesla Toronto does have a recovery charger, and they're going to do a recovery on this Roadster, which is what we do. So you don't have to ship your car in all instances. And in conversations with Tesla, it looks like they're going to reactivate this Tesla Roadster battery recovery program at key or certain service centers.
That's great news as well, because it's ultimately we want to try to serve the community and help them out. And I feel like it's my opinion totally, but I feel like we've helped the Tesla Tempe service center become much more capable in its ability to do Roadster service, simply because we do so much business with them.
Mhm.
Things like the battery replacements and stuff like that. Seeing that there is a service center, especially all the way across North America up in Toronto, that's going to be able to do these level 1 recoveries is great news.
And trying to get these cars across the border is just a red tape nightmare. So that helps. The other thing that you mentioned about Tesla is, they're far more prone for partnerships like this, collaboration, sharing information. When at the end of the day, it's about good customer service. What does it matter where the information comes from or who does it? The car gets back on the road, the customer can enjoy it again.
Well, we've really seen that relationship evolve over the years that we've worked with them. From who are you, go away, to
Right.
really collaborating and working with us a lot.
Right, and recognizing that each of us have gifts and talents, and if we collaborate, there's synergy that comes out of that.
Yeah.
A better level of service for the customers. So we've got a picture I want to pop up, Jesse. It's the Alloygator. There are two of them. Let's do the red one first, the red Ferrari. We're doing another project in-house now for the wheel protection. And what this is it's a rim that goes around the wheel that gets installed on the wheel that prevents curb rash. Can we go to the next picture, and I'll show something else there. And of course, you can color coordinate. If you got a red car, you can go red or get alternating colors. But if you notice, there's some damage on this wheel. It would cost you a lot of money to fix this wheel. By putting an Alloygator solution on this wheel, it covers up the imperfection and protects it from there on out. So this is a great product. We've begun using it on Model S's. I think we have our first Roadster application this week.
Oh, good.
For that product. And I wanted to make you aware of that. If you're interested in purchasing the kit, you can get it through either Alloygator or on our e-store. Either of those will work. And again, we swear by it. If you, for those of you that have beautiful wheels, which most people think they do, there's nothing more frustrating than backing up or going forward and realizing that you have just destroyed that wheel.
Well, and it's so easy to do with these modern car wheels. That Michelin tire is a great example in that picture of in the older style wheels, the tire bulges out beyond the profile of the wheel. And so when you hit the curb, it's the tire hitting the curb, not the wheel itself.
Yeah.
Now on these more modern cars, especially with the
low profile
wheels, or the low profile tires, those low profile tires simply don't have that sidewall available to them.
Yeah.
And so the wheels tend to stick out, and you tend to see that, and it happens so fast.
Yeah, instantly.
Oh,
All right, I've got a folder there, Jesse. It's the PPF removal folder. And if we can pop up, I'll tell you which image to bring up first. Let's bring up PPF old-new 300. Paint protection film is a great way to protect your paint. Rock chips, even keeps a shine on the car that you would normally have to replicate with a great wax job. So it protects, it shines the car. The problem with it is a a polycarbonate type product, which is not completely impervious to ultraviolet rays. So as it ages, it begins to deteriorate. Here's a sample of a Roadster that we did recently where the PPF had aged. This was, I believe, a 2010 or 2009 Roadster. It was there from day one. PPF will last about 8 years. After that, you have to get serious about taking it off and reapplying it, because if you don't, here's what happens. The adhesive that's underneath the plastic, even after it gets cloudy like this, begins to harden and it eventually crystallizes. And as it does, it bonds with the clear coat that's on the paint. Then the only way to get it off is you end up removing clear coat along with the PPF, no matter how hard you try, and then you need a repaint. This particular car, we were able to remove the PPF off around 70% of the car except for the front clip, and that needed to be repainted eventually. You can see the procedure, Jesse, if we bring up 4 images -2. And here is both the removal process and the process of putting the car back together with the new front clip. It was an enormous amount of labor because it had aged so much. So it is a great product. Let's bring up one more image on a Tesla Roadster. It's called Yellow. The Arctic White Tesla Roadsters are the ones most prone to this. By the way, before we back away, well, we're already gone, that Radiant Red Roadster that you saw earlier, for some reason, red is the worst color for UV absorption for PPF. I don't know the physiology behind it or the physics behind it, but what also happens with paint protection film, especially the older stuff, is it begins to yellow, which you won't notice on a colored car.
Right.
But on an Arctic White car, like the one that we're going to pop up here, it is called Yellow in that same folder. And you can see the variation in color, which is very noticeable on a Arctic White Roadster. Again, the only way to resolve this is either paint the car that same shade of yellow, which we don't recommend because that's very expensive.
Right.
Or remove that yellow PPF. There's nothing you can do to bleach it or restore it in any way. But as a public service, we do want to go on record that paint protection film has a huge upside, but it also has a downside, and it needs to be removed and reapplied every 6 to 8 years. And if you wait too long, then the cost goes up tremendously. I've got one more image that I want to pop up, Jesse, and this gets into collector cars. It's called PPF Etch-3. And what we have here is PPF that was applied by the factory, and this may have been Lotus because this is VIN number 5 that eventually was shipped over to the US. And back then, Tesla had PPF that had a watermark image or a Tesla shield in it. The VIN number 5 is probably way overdue for this PPF replacement, but
Sure.
because it's a collectible car, we're going to leave it. And we think that it may add to the collectability. So not all PPF should be removed, at least in our opinion. Even though you can see that this PPF is showing its age, it's not cloudy yet, but there's definitely some wear and scratches in it. Because of that watermark, which is part of the car's provenance, we're going to leave that on Tesla VIN number 5.
Well, yeah, I could see that watermark is really going to potentially add to the value of the car. And in my opinion, it looks like you're starting to see some of the yellowing of that PPF.
Most likely, yeah. And with
That's
that
why
red,
there's
you
that
can't
little
tell.
bit different color.
So eventually the car may look a little bit more orange than the radiant red that it is with that yellow blend in there.
Yeah.
All right, looks like we got a few more questions.
Yeah, Greg, George from the Watch Tree Builds channel on YouTube. He says sunroof drain lines could be causing the water. This was a response to Mark Hendricks, but Mark has responded as well to George and to us and said there is no sunroof on his car. So yeah, that's I think we're going to stand by what we originally said without knowing further information. Good chance that there's something going on with a condensate line of some sort. Crunch to Grace Hopper on YouTube. Catching up from minus 50. Thumbs up, number 8. So thank you very much, Crunch. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, likewise. Instagram, Ilayatu_Sabe. Have you seen the Cyber Tesla? Oh, absolutely. We actually have in our live section on our YouTube channel a podcast where we invited the creator of Cyber Tesla. And can't remember the name, guys. Help me here.
Cyber Hooligan.
Cyber Hooligan. All right. His real name was something other than that, but I'm sure that wasn't his birth name. But yeah, Cyber Hooligan. Interesting character. Great work that he's doing with that car, and very popular.
You know, I think I need to go back to his YouTube channel again and take a look at what his latest updates are, because that is just going to be a beautiful car when he's all done with it.
David Andreev?
That's it. Yes, David Andreev. He has an Instagram following that is just massive, well over 100,000 or something like that. All right, staying with some Tesla Roadster news or tips. We have a section on our website that's called newsletters. And one of them, each newsletter, by the way, has a tip at the end of it, aside from the content in the newsletter, which is always informative. But we collected all of the tips on the numerous newsletters we have. It's the one in the upper left-hand corner. And I'm going to read you a couple of these that we had put out over the years to help the Tesla Roadster owners.
Okay.
The charge port door, or the charge port, is a high current connecting point which periodically requires cleaning and lubrication. Most people don't realize it or do that. You can buy a spray called Deoxit. It's a contact cleaner that chemically improves conductivity and deoxidizes and reduces wear and abrasion. Go to Amazon. It's readily available. Deoxit, not terribly expensive. So if you spray that on there periodically, you'll see the gunk and dirt and grime come off. And then, of course, wipe it. Now, both socket and charge cable plugs need this maintenance. So you need to do it to both your charge cable and the port on the door, which is the socket portion. And then we recommend using compressed air and Q-tips to clean out the recessed areas after spraying Deoxit. And then you want to finish the job by applying a Teflon lubricant, not an oil-based lubricant, but Teflon, and something like a McLube product, McLube. You go to AutoZone. I know they have Teflon spray lubricants.
Sure. And of all things, go to your bicycle dealer because Teflon lubricant is wildly popular for chains and for the chain rings on bicycles.
Good point.
It doesn't gunk up and collect grease and stuff like the standard oils do.
And spray on your pants when you're going really fast.
Yes, exactly.
It's too wet.
Exactly.
All right, so there's a tip for you. Another one, Tesla Roadster brakes. And this is the first sentence. Roadster brakes are undersized. Well, the reason they're undersized is they're a holdover from the original Lotus Elise days when you didn't have a 1,000-pound battery pack in the car. Those of you that are used to driving a Roadster and ICE cars probably realize that you have to take a bit more precaution with your stopping distances with a Tesla Roadster. It won't stop quite on a dime like your ICE vehicle will. So, and you also have regenerative braking, of course, which means that the brakes don't get enough of a workout.
Sure.
So, our tip is every once in a while, go out on a deserted paved road and do several hard stops. You want to do emergency level stops, hard enough to trigger the ABS, and do this until your rotor surfaces gleam like mirrors, and then do it periodically to maintain them. The results will be night and day in terms of braking performance. So not only do you break off the glaze that's on your rotors,
Mm-hmm.
but you're actually going to improve your stopping distance, and all of which may prevent you from having a collision at some point in time.
Well, sure. If I remember correctly, the Lotus Elise comes in somewhere between 2,000 and 2,300 pounds. Tesla Roadster comes in somewhere just north of 3,000 pounds once you include the battery pack. So you just do the numbers. That's about a 40% weight increase, and there was no change in the brakes themselves.
Right.
Tremendous amount of extra momentum that you're trying to slow down.
And those of you that have a little bit of time to spare, that website area where those the newsletters are great reading. They're highly informative. And these were usually born out of frequently asked questions.
Mhm.
And once we collected enough of them, we decided maybe this is something we need to publish.
Yeah, we experienced one thing just this week. I remember on a European Tesla Roadster, on Raphael's Roadster,
Mhm.
he was having problems charging at 120 volts.
Mhm.
And I'm hoping that that will eventually make its way into the tip section, although it's not necessarily a consumer tip. You can change your European style Roadsters through the software so that they can charge at 120 volts.
So they recognize a pilot signal, which is absent in some countries, right?
Yeah, both the pilot signal and Europe, because it's on more of a 220 to 250 volt standard, simply wasn't recognizing the voltage level 120 volts as a valid voltage level. So the fact is, we can we can bring the Roadsters in. It's a simple software change, basically a flag inside the software that your little checkbox that you're unchecking that takes off the limit for the 220 volt charging and allows the PEM then to charge at 110 volts as well.
Mm-hmm. Our most popular newsletter that we have out on that website section is one that is called What to Do When Your Roadster Gets Bricked. This is one that we send out a number of times every week, and we send it to not only owners, but oftentimes Tesla service centers as well. It gives a nice step-by-step instruction what to do to make sure that that car is going to be recoverable. And it doesn't just simply go into hard brick status, which then the only solution is a $30,000 battery pack replacement.
Right.
But it provides pictures. It shows how to remove the service plug, what screens you need to go through to get that car in tow mode, which is going to reduce the transport costs. So a lot of good information there. There's another newsletter, too, that for a Roadster that's been bricked, that is not in tow mode, there's a way that you can actually wake up the 12 volts to get it in tow mode. And so we have that newsletter as well, how to wake up a Tesla Roadster. And those are probably the most popular ones that we're constantly referencing.
Well, I think without too many other questions here, it's getting just about time to wrap up. I know we're just a little bit over an hour today.
Okay. So tomorrow, those of you that are interested in that world-traveling VIN 507 Roadster, Rafael de Maestri, the owner of that vehicle, will be available for questions and answers, and it should be a very informative podcast. The other podcasts that we do are Friday mornings, Gruber Power Services, which is one of the sister divisions here, where we service critical power equipment in data centers all across the United States. And if you have a UPS or you work in an IT operation, that would be an interesting podcast for you to join. And then Sunday, Jesse and I have taken on a volunteer project to do an AI podcast. And this Sunday, we're going to broach some subjects that we haven't touched on yet, such as why is Sam Altman and Elon Musk so worried about AI and its dangers? And all this talk about guardrails, what are the guardrails? What will they do? How do they work? What are we trying to prevent?
And does AI already know what those guardrails are and already know a way to get around them?
Yeah, good point. By the way, let's just insert one quick thing about about our AI experience. it's going to be every company's or every individual's and company's challenge to learn how to use AI to our benefit.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than fear it, embrace it. Learn what you can about it. Before we pass judgment, let's give it a shot. So one of the supervisors, one of the managers actually yesterday came to me and said, you know what, we're getting ready to do an ad to the gaming industry. And we repair uninterruptible power systems in casinos and,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, uptime is absolutely critical because they're constantly generating income by having electronic devices humming and running, slot machines, all of that. So she asked me to create an ad for the gaming industry that points out the importance of critical power and uptime and our role in this. So this morning, I popped the prompt in there, and it was just a one-sentence prompt, and I wasn't expecting much because normally you have to massage these and fine-tune them and try again. And nothing happened for 20 seconds, and I snickered and I said, yeah, AI, you're pretty slow, aren't you? I could have done it much quicker than that. So I walked away, got a drink, came back, and it had spit out this article with a main heading and subheadings, and it nailed it perfectly. It knew exactly what I was looking for. It talked about the need for uptime and critical power, but more importantly, it took our role and our capabilities, which I never gave it,
Right.
and it weaved that into that article to show what we can do and how we can help casinos and the gaming industry keep their equipment running. And it knew all that instinctively. So I was very impressed. I felt irrelevant at that point. It would normally have taken me a half a day to a day since I'm an obsessive OCD writer, and I rewrite and I rewrite and I edit and I do it over and over again. Within a couple of minutes, we had exactly what we needed.
Yeah, and I know that we're going to be using that type of feature a lot more. They're starting to come out in the press about how AI, one of the first areas that it's really starting to impact is knowledge workers, especially copywriters,
Mhm.
because of its abilities to do things like this.
Mhm. So we're very impressed, and if you have some time Sunday morning, Jesse and I will be here. Neither one of us will have shaved. We'll probably be drinking some coffee. We'd like to smoke cigars, but they won't allow us to do that in social media because we get reclassified. So we can't do the Joe Rogan thing where we've got a glass of whiskey and a cigar and heaven forbid weed, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
We won't do that. So Jesse's pointing. He looks like it. We've got another comment from George. He says, does Jesse get paid double time for coming in Sunday? ? That's why he was so vehemently
That's a
pointing
good
at
question,
that.
George. I might have to broach that subject.
Well, at this point, none of us are getting paid. It's a public service, and we're just having fun with it. And, the participation we get is well beyond our expectations. How many people did you say, Jesse, we had last Sunday on our second podcast?
2051.
Amazing. And I think we'll be hard-pressed to get that many in this podcast.
Now, that's across all platforms, of course. But
Yeah.
we go live on the same 7 or 8 platforms, and
Right.
I think there's just a lot more people sitting around on Sunday not doing much.
That could be.
Very possible. Very possible.
So, again, thank you for joining us. We're having fun. Hope you're having fun. And so we'll see you next week or during one of these future podcasts coming up here.
By all means, have a great day and take care.